Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. Imagine a tech billionaire staring into the eyes of two sons he never knew he had. Sons who grew up with nothing while he had everything. Now picture them in a hospital room, secrets pouring out, with the whispers of a dying mother about to change everything. How did they get here? What happens when the truth crashes into a life built on lies? Stay. You won't believe where it goes. Immediately comment where you're watching the video and subscribe to our channel, and we'll start the story right now. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fading hope, a sterile tang that clung to the back of Ethan Caldwell's throat as he stood frozen in the doorway. Rain streaked the window of Seattle General's fifth floor, blurring the neon glow of the city skyline beyond, a skyline he'd helped shape with his tech empire, Caldwell Tech. At 52, Ethan was a man who commanded boardrooms and bent algorithms to his will. But here, in this cramped space filled with beeping machines, he felt like a stranger in his own life. Across the room, a woman lay propped against white pillows, her auburn hair dulled by sickness, her breaths shallow but steady. Clara Hayes. The name hit him like a punch he hadn't seen coming. Two young men flanked her bed, their faces a mix of fury and disbelief. The taller one, Lucas, gripped the metal rail so hard his knuckles whitened, his cheap tie dangling loose like a noose he'd forgotten to tighten. The other, Noah, stood closer to Clara, his doctor's scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, his green eyes, eerily familiar, locked on Ethan with something softer than anger, something closer to betrayal. The air was thick, heavy with words no one wanted to say first. Then Clara's voice, frail but firm, cut through the silence like a knife through the Seattle fog. "Ethan," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for him. "These are your sons." The room seemed to tilt. Ethan's polished Italian loafers felt glued to the linoleum floor, his tailored suit suddenly too tight across his chest. Sons? The word ricocheted in his skull, absurd and impossible. Then he'd built a fortune from nothing, turned a garage startup into a billion-dollar giant. But this was a code he couldn't debug. Lucas stepped forward, his jaw tight, his voice low and dangerous. "You're telling me this guy, this tech god who's on every magazine cover in the country, is our dad? And you never thought to mention it, Mom?" His words dripped with sarcasm, but the crack in his voice betrayed the hurt underneath. Noah put a hand on Lucas's arm, a quiet plea to hold back, but his own eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "She's been asking for you, Mr. Caldwell, for weeks. We didn't know why until tonight." Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His mind raced back, 25 years back, to a rainy summer in a cramped office near the University District, where Clara Hayes had been his brightest coder, her laughter a lifeline during those sleepless nights of debugging. She'd vanished without a word, leaving behind a half-finished program and a hole in his life he'd never filled. And now, here she was, dying, with two grown men staring at him like he owed them a lifetime. I don't understand," he finally managed, his voice rough, unfamiliar even to himself. "Clara, what the hell is this?" Her smile was weak but warm, the kind that used to light up their late-night pizza runs. "I made a choice, Ethan, to protect you, to protect them, but time's run out, and they deserve the truth." Rewind 12 hours. Ethan Caldwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office atop the Caldwell Tech Tower, a sleek monolith piercing the Seattle skyline. The city sprawled below him, a patchwork of gray and green under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or just tease. At 52, he had everything a man could buy. A private jet parked at Boeing Field, a waterfront mansion on Lake Washington, and a reputation as the guy who'd made AI education the next big thing. But the bourbon in his hand, top shelf, poured from a bottle that cost more than most people's rent, tasted like regret. His divorce from Vanessa had finalized a month ago, a messy split that left him richer but hollower. She'd taken half his stock options and his trust in relationships, leaving behind a son he barely saw, 17-year-old Dylan, now at a Swiss boarding school, more fluent in texting excuses than talking to his dad. Ethan swirled the amber liquid, staring out at Puget Sound, wondering when success had started feeling like a cage. Across town, in a cramped apartment above a fishmonger's stall near Pike Place Market, Lucas and Noah Hayes were drowning in a different kind of storm. The place smelled of salt and old wood, the kind of damp that never left Seattle rentals in March. Lucas sat at their wobbly kitchen table, legal briefs scattered like fallen leaves, his laptop open to a case file against a Caldwell tech subsidiary dumping chemicals into Lake Washington. At 25, he'd clawed his way through law school on scholarships and grit, fueled by a need to fight for the little guy. Like the single mom who'd raised him and his twin, Noah slumped on the sagging couch, still in his scrubs from a 12-hour shift at Seattle General's pediatric ward. His hands shook slightly as he flipped through their mom's old leather journal, a relic she'd pressed into his hands that morning with a look he couldn't read. "She's getting worse," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "The scans came back today. It spread to her lungs." Lucas didn't look up from his screen. "She's tough, Noah. Always has been. She'll pull through." "She's not invincible, man." Noah's tone sharpened, the edge of a doctor who'd seen too many charts end in flat lines. "And this, he held up the journal, pages yellowed and curling. "She keeps writing about some guy named Ethan Caldwell. Sound familiar?" Lucas snorted, shoving his laptop aside. "What, the billionaire? Mom's delirious, or you're reading too much into her chemo dreams." But Noah didn't laugh. He turned a page, revealing a faded Polaroid. A younger Clara, hair wild and free, laughing next to a man with sharp green eyes and a crooked smile. Below it, in her neat cursive, a single line. "Ethan, summer '99, the start of everything." Noah's breath caught. "Look at his eyes, Lucas. Tell me those aren't ours." Lucas grabbed the photo, his lawyer's mind clicking into gear. The resemblance was uncanny, the same jawline he saw in the mirror every morning, the same intensity Noah carried into every surgery. "No way," he muttered. "No damn way." Back at the hospital, the truth hung between them like a live wire. Ethan took a step closer to Clara's bed, his polished exterior cracking under the weight of her words. "Sons? Clara, you left me. Left us, without a word. I looked for you, damn it, for months. And now you drop this on me." Clara's eyes glistened, but her voice held steady. "You were on the edge of something big, Ethan. Caldwell Tech was about to take off. You had a wife, a life. I was just a kid with a positive test and a dream I didn't want to ruin." Lucas cut in, his anger boiling over. "So you let us grow up clipping coupons and dodging landlords while he jabbed a finger at Ethan, lived it up in his glass tower. That's your idea of protecting us?" "Lucas, stop," Noah said, softer now, his hand resting on Clara's frail shoulder. "She did it for us. Look at her. She's been carrying this alone all these years." Ethan's gaze darted between them, landing on their faces, faces that mirrored his own in ways he couldn't unsee. The sharp cheekbones, the green eyes that Vanessa had always said were his best feature. He thought of the park near his old office in Fremont, where he'd sometimes catch himself staring at kids playing, a pang he'd never named tugging at his chest. Had they been there too, all those years? "I didn't know," he said, the words tasting like ash. "If I'd known, You would have what? Lucas snapped. Sent us a check? Played weekend dad? Don't act like you'd have cared. Enough! Clara's voice rose, thin but fierce, silencing them all. She coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Noah flinch, but she waved him off. I didn't bring you here to fight. I brought you here because I'm running out of time, and you all deserve to know who you are to each other. The monitors beeped steadily, marking the seconds as Ethan, Lucas, and Noah stood locked in a triangle of shock and unspoken questions. Outside, the rain pounded harder, washing Seattle clean, or maybe just drowning it deeper. Ethan's hand twitched toward Clara's, but he stopped himself, unsure if he had the right. Lucas clenched his fists, torn between storming out and demanding more. Noah wiped his eyes, the doctor in him fighting the son who just wanted his mom to live. This was no boardroom deal, no algorithm to solve. This was blood, raw and real, spilling into a life Ethan thought he'd mastered. And as Clara's breathing steadied, her eyes pleading for peace, he knew one thing for damn sure. Nothing would ever be the same. Hey, if that moment in the hospital room hit you right in the feels, stick around. There's a hell of a lot more to this story. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how Ethan, Lucas, and Noah figure out what comes next. Drop a comment below. What do you think Ethan's gonna do now that the truth's out? Let's talk about it. Seattle wore its usual March coat, gray, damp, and unrelenting. The rain tapped a steady rhythm against the courthouse windows in King County, where Lucas Hayes stood at the plaintiff's table, his thrift store tie knotted too tight, and his palms sweaty despite the chill. At 25, he'd spent years scraping by on scholarships and late-night diner shifts with his mom, Clara, to get here, a lawyer fighting for the underdog. Today, that underdog was Lake Washington, its waters turning murky from chemical runoff, traced back to a Caldwell Tech subsidiary. Lucas didn't care that the defendant was a cog in Ethan Caldwell's billion-dollar machine. He just wanted justice. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as the judge flipped through documents. Lucas adjusted his glasses, cracked from a fall last week he couldn't afford to fix, and cleared his throat. Your Honor, the evidence is clear, he said, voice steady despite the knot in his gut. Caldwell Tech's plant in Renton has been dumping benzene levels 50% above federal limits for months. Fish are dying, kids are getting sick, and they think a fat check will make it go away. It won't. Across the aisle, the defense lawyer, a slick suit from some downtown firm, smirked, scribbling notes like this was a game he'd already won. Lucas hated guys like him. Guys who'd never known what it was like to count quarters for bus fare or skip meals to pay rent. He thought of Clara, coughing harder every night in their cramped apartment near Pike Place, and straightened his spine. This wasn't just about the lake. It was personal. Meanwhile, across the city at Seattle General, Noah Hayes scrubbed out of a 12-hour shift in the pediatric ward, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on his face, pale from exhaustion, but sharp with the focus of a guy who'd fought his way through med school on nothing but grit and coffee. At 25, he was the softer twin, the one who'd bandaged Lucas's scraped knees as kids, but he carried the same fire under his quiet exterior. Today, that fire had saved a life. The patient was a 6-year-old boy, Tommy Torres, rushed in with a fever spiking at 104 and a rare infection eating at his lungs. Noah had caught it just in time. Pneumocystis, a beast most docs missed until it was too late. He'd spent hours in the OR, hands steady as he intubated the kid, the beep of the heart monitor his only soundtrack. Now, as he peeled off his gloves, the boy's mom stood in the hallway, tears streaking her mascara. Maggie Torres was a petite woman in her 40s, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her blazer crisp despite the chaos. She grabbed Noah's hand, squeezing it like a lifeline. "You saved him, Dr. Hayes. I don't know how to thank you." Noah gave her a tired smile, the kind that crinkled his green eyes Maggie couldn't help but notice. "Just doing my job, Ms. Torres. Tommy's a fighter. He'll be okay." She nodded, wiping her face with a crumpled tissue. "You don't get it. I work for Caldwell Tech. Ethan Caldwell's my boss. He's been asking about the kids in this ward ever since we started funding it. If I'd lost Tommy..." Her voice broke, then steadied. "You remind me of someone he used to talk about. A woman from way back. Clara something. Sharp as hell," he said. Noah froze, the name hitting him like a rogue wave. "Clara?" he repeated, his throat dry. "What did he say about her?" Maggie shrugged, distracted as a nurse called her back to Tommy's room. Just that she was the best coder he ever met. Disappeared on him, though. Broke his heart, I think. Noah stood there, the hallway spinning slightly as her words sank in. Clara, his mom. The journal he'd skimmed last night flashed in his mind, those cryptic lines about Ethan and the start of everything. He pulled out his phone, hands trembling, and texted Lucas. "We need to talk, now." Ethan Caldwell wasn't in a courtroom or a hospital that afternoon. He was at the Rainier Club, Seattle's swankiest haunt for the elite, sipping a dry martini under chandeliers that glittered like frozen raindrops. The place smelled of old money and cedar, its wood-paneled walls lined with photos of mayors and CEOs shaking hands. Ethan's navy suit hugged his frame, his silver cufflinks catching the light as he leaned back in a leather chair. At 52, he looked every bit the tech titan. Sharp jaw, salt and pepper hair, green eyes that could cut through bullshit faster than a laser. But today, those eyes were restless. He'd come to meet Ray Sullivan, the club's manager, and an old college buddy from UW days. Ray slid into the seat across from him, his bald head gleaming under the lights, his apron swapped for a blazer that barely buttoned over his gut. "You look like crap, Caldwell," Ray said, grinning as he poured himself a splash of Ethan's gin. "Divorce still kicking your ass?" Ethan smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Something like that. Vanessa's got Dylan sending me guilt trip texts from Switzerland now. Kid's pissed I missed his ski meet." "Kids'll do that," Ray said, leaning back. "Speaking of, you ever hear from that girl, Clara, the one who used to hang with us at the old garage?" Ethan's glass paused halfway to his lips. "Clara Hayes?" "Not in 25 years. Why?" Ray shrugged, swirling his drink. "Dunno. Saw her name in some old alumni newsletter. Works at a diner now, I think. Funny how life turns out, huh? You two were tight back then." Tight didn't cover it. Ethan's mind flickered to 99. Rain-soaked nights in a Fremont garage, Clara's auburn hair spilling over a keyboard as she debugged code he couldn't crack. She'd been his secret weapon, his spark, until she ghosted him right when Caldwell Tech landed its first big contract. He'd searched for her, called every number, knocked on every door he could find, but she'd vanished like mist off the sound. "Yeah," he muttered, staring into his martini. "Funny." Back at the courthouse, Lucas's case hit a snag. The defense pulled a last-minute witness, a plant manager who swore the benzene levels were within acceptable variance. Bullshit, Lucas thought. But the judge bought it, adjourning until next week. He stormed out into the drizzle, his beat-up sneakers slapping puddles, and checked his phone. Noah's text glowed on the screen. He ducked into a coffee shop near the waterfront, the smell of espresso cutting through the damp, and called his twin. "Dude, what's up?" Lucas said, voice tight. "I just got smoked in court by Caldwell's goons." Noah's reply came fast, urgent. "Forget court. I just talked to some lady. Ethan Caldwell's assistant. She knew Mom. Said he was hung up on her for years." Lucas's stomach dropped. "What? You're saying the guy I'm suing is, what, Mom's ex?" "I don't know, man. But look at this." Noah's voice crackled as he sent a photo, the Polaroid from the journal. Lucas squinted at his screen. Clara, young and laughing, next to a guy who could have been his doppelganger 25 years ago. "That's him, Lucas. Ethan freaking Caldwell." Lucas's grip tightened on his phone, the buzz of the coffee shop fading. "Holy shit," he breathed. "You're telling me the bastard poisoning the lake is our—" "Don't say it yet," Noah cut in. "We need to ask Mom. Tonight." That evening, the twins sat in Clara's hospital room, the journal open between them like a loaded gun. She'd been dozing, her breathing ragged, but her eyes fluttered open as they walked in. The fluorescent light made her look smaller, her skin paper-thin against the IV lines snaking up her arm. "Hey, my boys," she rasped, managing a smile. "Rough day." Lucas didn't waste time. "Mom, who's Ethan Caldwell to you?" He held up the Polaroid, his voice shaking despite his effort to stay cool. Clara's smile faded, her hand reaching for the photo but stopping short. "Where'd you find that?" "Doesn't matter," Noah said gently, sitting beside her. "He's been asking about you, at the hospital, through his people. Why didn't you tell us?" Her eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. "Because I walked away so you two could have your own lives, not his shadow. He's your father, but I didn't want him to know. Not then." The room spun for Lucas, his anger flaring hot and fast. "So we grew up broke, while he's out there playing King of Seattle. That's your big plan?" Noah grabbed his arm, voice low. "She's sick, Lucas. Let her explain." Clara's tears spilled over, but her voice held firm. "I'm explaining now because I can't carry it anymore. He's coming here tonight. I asked Ray to get him. You deserve to meet him, whether you hate me for it or not." And just like that, the door creaked open, and Ethan Caldwell stepped in, rain-soaked, wide-eyed, and about to have his world turned upside down. The hospital room felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow. Ethan Caldwell stood just inside the doorway, his soaked trench coat dripping onto the linoleum, his green eyes darting between Clara Hayes and the two young men she'd just called his sons. Rain hammered the window, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in Lucas Hayes's chest. He'd spent 25 years building a life out of scraps, scholarships, late-night study sessions, a mom who'd worked herself to the bone, and now this guy, this billionaire, waltzed in like he owned the place, which, in a way, he kind of did. Lucas stepped forward, fists clenched, his voice a low growl. "So that's it? You're our dad and you've been living it up in your penthouse while Mom's coughing her lungs out in this dump? Real classy, Caldwell." Ethan flinched, but his CEO instincts kicked in, smoothing his shock into something controlled. "I didn't know, kid. If I'd had any idea—" "Kid?" Lucas snapped, cutting him off. "Don't you dare call me that! I'm not some intern you can charm with a handshake and a bonus check." Noah, still by Clara's bedside, shot Lucas a warning look, his scrubs rustling as he shifted. "Lucas, cool it. Mom's right here. She doesn't need this." Clara reached for Lucas's hand, her fingers trembling but insistent. "He's telling the truth, honey. I never told him. It was my call." Lucas yanked his hand back, betrayal flashing in his eyes that, damn it, looked too much like Ethan's. "Your call? You let us grow up thinking Dad was some deadbeat who ditched us when he was out there raking in billions? What the hell, Mom?" Ethan took a step closer, his voice rough but steady. "Clara, why? We were a team. I would have done anything for you back then." Her cough broke the tension, a wet, ragged sound that made Noah wince and check her IV line with practiced hands. When she spoke again, her words were soft but heavy. "You had Vanessa, Ethan, and Caldwell Tech was about to take off. I was 22, pregnant and scared. I didn't want to be the one who tanked your dream or your marriage." The mention of Vanessa hit Ethan like a slap. His ex-wife's shadow loomed large, even now, a year after the divorce papers dried. "Vanessa and I were barely holding it together back then," he said, running a hand through his damp hair. "If you'd told me—" "You'd have what?" Lucas interrupted, his voice rising. "Played house with us while your company went under? Spare me the hero act." Noah stood up, his patience fraying. "Enough, Lucas. You're acting like this is some courtroom showdown. This is Mom's life, our family. Can't you see she's dying?" The word dying hung in the air like smoke, choking them all. Clara's monitors beeped faster, a staccato rhythm that mirrored the chaos. Lucas glared at Noah, his twin, his mirror, and for the first time in years, he didn't recognize the guy staring back. "You're fine with this? With him waltzing in like some savior after 25 years of nothing?" "I'm not fine with any of it," Noah shot back, his voice cracking. "But I'm not going to make it worse for her. Look at her, man. She can barely breathe." Ethan watched them, these strangers who were his blood, and felt a pang he couldn't name. "I don't know what you want from me," he said, quieter now. "I can't fix the past. But I'm here now." Lucas laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Here now? Too late, Caldwell. Way too damn late." He grabbed the journal from the bedside table, shoving it into his jacket. "I'm out. You two deal with this fairy tale reunion." "Lucas, wait!" Clara's plea was cut off by another cough, weaker this time. Noah moved to her side, but Lucas was already storming out, the door slamming behind him with a bang that echoed down the hall. Outside, the rain hit Lucas like a wall, soaking his cheap jacket as he stumbled toward the parking lot. Seattle's neon lights blurred through the downpour. Bars, coffee shops, the distant glow of the Space Needle mocking him with its permanence. He'd spent his whole life fighting to prove he didn't need a father, that he and Noah and Mom were enough. Now the rug was pulled out, and the guy holding it was Ethan freaking Caldwell, the same bastard he was suing in court tomorrow. His phone buzzed, Noah's name on the screen, but he ignored it, kicking a puddle so hard water splashed his jeans. "Screw this," he muttered, climbing into his beat-up Honda and peeling out into the night. Back in the room, Noah adjusted Clara's oxygen mask, his hand steady despite the storm in his chest. Ethan hovered awkwardly, a man used to fixing problems with money or code, not tears. "She needs rest," Noah said, not looking at him. "You should go." Ethan nodded, but his feet didn't move. "I didn't mean to blow up your lives. I need to understand." "Then start with this." Noah handed him a folded letter from the journal, Clara's handwriting shaky but clear. "She wrote it years ago, never sent it. Maybe it'll tell you what we can't." Ethan took it, the paper creasing under his fingers, and slipped it into his pocket. "I'll be back," he said, voice low. "For her. For you." Noah didn't reply, just watched him leave, the door clicking shut softer this time. Clara's breathing evened out, her hand limp in his. He sank into the chair beside her, burying his face in his hands, the weight of the night crashing down. Half an hour later, Ethan sat in his Tesla outside the hospital, the engine humming as rain streaked the windshield. He unfolded Clara's letter, the words blurring under the dashboard light. "Dear Ethan, by the time you read this, our boys will be 5. I tried to tell you once, but I couldn't ruin what you'd built. They're beautiful, stubborn, and so much like you." His throat tightened. 5. They'd been 5, and he'd been too busy chasing the next deal to notice. His phone lit up. A text from Maggie Torres, his assistant. "Board meeting set for 8 a.m. Vanessa's been calling. Sounds pissed." Ethan groaned. Vanessa. The last thing he needed was his ex stirring the pot. He typed back, "Handle it. I'm tied up." Then he tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and stared into the rain, Clara's words looping in his head. Meanwhile, across town in a sleek condo overlooking Elliott Bay, Vanessa Caldwell paced her living room, her blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, her manicured nails tapping her wine glass. She'd seen the news. Lucas Hayes's lawsuit against Caldwell Tech was gaining traction, and whispers about Ethan's mystery sons were already leaking from some hospital gossip. She'd spent 20 years keeping Clara Hayes buried, intercepting that damn letter back in '05 to protect her marriage. Now it was unraveling, and she'd be damned if Ethan got a happy ending she didn't. She dialed a number, her voice ice cold when the line picked up. "It's me. I need you to dig up everything on Lucas and Noah Hayes, dirt, debts, anything, and leak it to the press. Ethan's not getting off this easy." The man on the other end, a private investigator she'd used during the divorce, grunted. "On it." "You sure about this, Vanessa? Caldwell's got deep pockets." "So do I," she snapped. "Make it quick." She hung up, staring out at the bay, the lights of ferries cutting through the dark. If Ethan wanted a family reunion, she'd make sure it came with a price tag he couldn't afford. Back at the apartment near Pike Place, Lucas burst in, soaking wet and fuming. The place was empty, Noah still at the hospital, and the silence felt like a slap. He flung the journal onto the table, pages splaying open to a photo of Clara and Ethan, young and laughing in a Fremont park. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands, the fight with Noah replaying like a bad loop. They'd always had each other's backs, through Mom's diner shifts, through college applications, through everything. Now it was cracking, and he didn't know how to fix it. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing Seattle's secrets deeper into the night. Tomorrow, Lucas would face Ethan in court. Tomorrow, Noah would face a choice. Tomorrow, everything would get worse. Whoa. Things just got real messy, didn't they? Lucas is ready to burn it all down. Noah's holding on by a thread, and Vanessa's about to throw a wrench in everything. Stick with us. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next twist. Drop a comment. Team Lucas or Team Noah? Let's get this debate going. The Rainier Club glowed like a beacon against Seattle's drizzly night, its Art Deco facade lit up with copper sconces that cast warm shadows on the wet pavement. Inside, the air buzzed with the clink of wine glasses and the hum of power. Tech moguls, politicians, and philanthropists swirling under chandeliers that dripped with old-world glamour. Ethan Caldwell stood near the bar, a martini in hand, his navy tuxedo crisp despite the chaos of the last 24 hours. He'd barely slept since leaving Clara's hospital room, her letter burning a hole in his pocket, her words, "our boys," looping in his head like a glitch he couldn't fix. Tonight was his annual charity gala, a fundraiser for the pediatric ward at Seattle General, a cause he'd backed for years without knowing why it tugged at him. Now, with Lucas and Noah out there somewhere, it felt less like generosity and more like fate laughing in his face. He scanned the room, nodding at familiar faces, senators, CEOs, his assistant Maggie Torres weaving through the crowd with her usual efficiency. But his mind was elsewhere, stuck on Clara's pale face and those green eyes staring back at him from her sons. Across town, Lucas Hayes adjusted the lapels of a borrowed suit, black, a little tight in the shoulders, courtesy of his law school buddy, Sophie Nguyen. He stood outside the Rainier Club, rain dripping off his umbrella, his breath fogging in the cold. Sophie had scored him an invite through a client, a loophole he'd jumped at when he realized Ethan would be here. He wasn't here for the gala. He was here to confront the man he'd spent a day hating more than ever. The lawsuit against Caldwell Tech was tomorrow, and Lucas had a file in his jacket pocket, proof of benzene dumping signed by Clara Hayes, dated 1999. He didn't know what it meant yet, but it was a weapon, and he planned to use it. Noah, meanwhile, wasn't supposed to be here. He'd been at the hospital with Clara, her fever spiking again, when Dr. Rachel Kim, his boss, called. "Caldwell's gala is tonight," she'd said, voice clipped. "He's doubling the ward's funding. Wants a doc there to speak. You're it." Noah had protested, but Rachel didn't budge, and now he stood in the club's marble foyer, still in his scrubs under a borrowed blazer, his hospital ID clipped to his pocket. He hadn't told Lucas. He didn't need another fight. Not tonight. The main hall was a sea of silk dresses and tailored suits, tables draped in cream linen, silverware gleaming like it cost more than Lucas's rent. He slipped in, dodging waiters with trays of champagne, his eyes locked on Ethan at the head table. The guy looked untouchable, tall, confident, shaking hands like he owned the world. Lucas's stomach twisted. This was the father he'd never had, the guy who'd left them to scrape by while he built an empire. He pushed through this crowd, his heart pounding, until he was close enough to smell Ethan's cologne, something expensive, woody, infuriating. Ethan turned just as Lucas reached him, their eyes meeting like a spark hitting dry grass. "Mr. Caldwell," Lucas said, voice loud enough to turn heads. "Nice party. Bet it cost more than the cleanup for Lake Washington." The chatter nearby faltered, a ripple of curiosity spreading. Ethan's smile tightened, but he kept his cool. "You're the lawyer, right? Hayes? I've seen your name on the filings. What's this about?" Lucas pulled the file from his jacket, slapping it onto the table with a thud that made glasses rattle. "This is about your company poisoning the lake. Benzene levels through the roof. And here's the kicker. My mom's signature's on your old permits. Clara Hayes. Ring a bell?" Ethan's face paled, his hand freezing mid-gesture. "Clara worked for me, yeah. But that was before you ditched her," Lucas cut in, his voice rising. "Before you left her pregnant with me and my brother while you climbed the Forbes list." The room went dead silent, forks pausing halfway to mouths, photographers lowering their cameras. Ethan's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, a familiar voice broke through the crowd. "Lucas, stop!" Noah shoved his way forward, his scrubs a stark contrast to the tuxedos around him. His face was flushed, his hands balled into fists. "This isn't the place, man." Lucas whirled on him, betrayal flaring. "What the hell are you doing here? Cozying up to him now?" "I'm here for the ward," Noah snapped, stepping between Lucas and Ethan. Then he turned to the crowd, his voice shaking but clear. "But since we're doing this, yeah, Ethan Caldwell's our dad. He didn't know because Mom never told him, and now she's dying, and we're all just here." A gasp rippled through the room. Ethan staggered back, his martini splashing onto the tablecloth. "Your dad?" he repeated, the words barely audible over the murmurs. "Both of you?" Before anyone could answer, a woman's voice sliced through the chaos, sharp, cold, and dripping with venom. "Oh, this is rich." Vanessa Caldwell strode in, her blonde hair swept into an updo, her red dress hugging her like a warning sign. She'd slipped in late, uninvited, and now she stood center stage, a smirk playing on her lips. "Ethan's little bastards finally crawled out of the woodwork, huh?" Ethan spun on her, fury flashing in his eyes. "Vanessa, get out. This isn't your circus." "Isn't it?" She laughed, holding up her phone, a news alert glowing on the screen. "Check your feeds, darling. Caldwell Tech CEO's secret sons sue him for millions. My guy at the Post just hit publish. You're welcome." Lucas lunged toward her, but Noah grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "She's baiting you, man. Don't." Ethan's hands shook as he snatched his own phone from his pocket, the headline glaring back at him. His empire, his perfect, polished empire, was cracking, and Vanessa was holding the hammer. "You did this?" he growled at her. "Why?" "Because you don't get to play happy family after screwing me over," she hissed, stepping closer. "I kept Clara's letter from you 20 years ago. Should have burned it." The crowd parted as Ethan stared her down, the air electric with tension. Lucas and Noah stood frozen, their fight forgotten, the weight of Vanessa's words sinking in. But before anyone could speak, Maggie Torres pushed through, her face pale, a leather journal clutched in her hands. "Ethan, wait," she said, breathless. "I found this in your office. Vanessa dropped it there last week. It's Clara's. You need to see it." Ethan took the journal, his fingers brushing the worn cover, the same one Lucas had stormed out with last night. He opened it to a dog-eared page, a photo of him and Clara, laughing in a Fremont park, and below it, her handwriting. He'll never know, but they're his legacy too. His breath caught, the room spinning as the truth hit harder than any headline. "Get them out," he said, voice low, nodding at security. "Vanessa, Lucas, all of you. I need a minute." Guards moved in, ushering a protesting Vanessa and a stunned Lucas toward the exit. Noah stayed, his eyes locked on Ethan, a silent question hanging between them. Ethan clutched the journal, his tuxedo suddenly too heavy, and sank into a chair as the crowd whispered around him. Maggie knelt beside him, her voice soft. "You okay, boss?" "No," he muttered, staring at the photo. "But I will be." Outside, Lucas kicked the curb, rain soaking his suit as Sophie caught up to him. "You just blew up your case, genius," she said, half laughing, half scolding. "And your family." "Yeah, well, it's all bullshit anyway," he shot back, but his voice wavered. He glanced back at the club, where Noah still stood with Ethan, and felt a pang he couldn't name. Inside, Noah watched Ethan flip through the journal, page after page of Clara's secrets spilling out. "She didn't want you to fail," Noah said quietly. "That's why she left." Ethan looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "And I failed her anyway." The rain kept falling, washing over Seattle's glitz and grime, as the gala dissolved into chaos. For Ethan, Lucas, and Noah, the night wasn't over. It was just beginning. The rain hadn't let up, pounding Seattle like it was trying to wash the city clean of its sins. Inside Seattle General, the fifth-floor hallway stretched long and cold, the fluorescent lights flickering like they were on their last legs. Ethan Caldwell stood at one end, his tuxedo jacket slung over his shoulder, the crisp white shirt underneath wrinkled and damp from the night's chaos. At the other end, Lucas and Noah Hayes faced him, a wall of anger and exhaustion between them. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, the beep of Clara's monitors leaking through the cracked door of her room like a ticking bomb. Lucas broke the silence first, his voice sharp as a blade. "You think showing up here in your fancy suit fixes anything? You've had 25 years to be a father, and you blew it." Ethan's jaw tightened, the weight of Clara's journal still heavy in his hand. "I didn't know, Lucas. You think I'd have left you, left her, if I had?" "Bullshit!" Lucas spat, stepping closer, his sneakers squeaking on the wet floor. "You were too busy building your empire to give a damn about anyone else. And now Mom's dying because she carried it all alone." Noah, leaning against the wall, arms crossed over his scrubs, shot Lucas a hard look. "Lay off, man. He's here now. That's got to count for something." "Count for something?" Lucas turned on his twin, eyes blazing. "You're seriously defending him? After everything we went through, clipping coupons, dodging eviction notices, while he's out there sipping martinis at the Rainier Club?" "I'm not defending him!" Noah pushed off the wall, his voice rising, raw and ragged. "I'm trying to keep Mom alive. She doesn't need us tearing each other apart right now." Ethan watched them, these two men, his sons, locked in a fight that felt like it had been brewing for decades. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in his throat. He'd faced down hostile takeovers and billion-dollar deals. But this was a mess he couldn't negotiate his way out of. "Enough," he finally said, low and firm, the CEO edge cutting through. "You want to hate me? Fine. But Clara's in there fighting for every breath, and I'm not leaving her again." Lucas laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "Oh, now you're the hero. Where were you when she worked double shifts at the diner? When Noah and I were eating day-old bread because that's all we had?" Ethan's hands balled into fists, the journal creasing under his grip. "I would have been there, damn it. She never gave me the chance. Because she knew you'd choose your company over us," Lucas shouted, his voice echoing down the hall. "And you're proving her right, showing up here like some savior when it's too late." Noah stepped between them, his hands up like a referee. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping her. Lucas, you're pissed. I get it, but he didn't know, and you—" He turned to Ethan, eyes fierce. "You don't get to waltz in and act like you can fix 25 years in one night." The door to Clara's room creaked open, and a nurse poked her head out, her face tight. "Dr. Hayes, you need to come in. Her fever's spiking again." Noah's breath hitched, and he bolted inside without a word, leaving Ethan and Lucas alone in the hallway. The silence was heavier than the rain outside, thick with everything they couldn't say. Lucas glared at Ethan, then turned on his heel, storming toward the elevator. "Stay away from her," he threw over his shoulder. "You've done enough damage." Ethan stood there, the journal trembling in his hand, the weight of Lucas's words sinking deep. He'd built Caldwell Tech from a garage into a titan, but standing here, he felt like a failure in a way no boardroom loss ever could match. Inside the room, Noah leaned over Clara's bed, his hands moving fast, checking her pulse, adjusting the oxygen mask, scanning the monitors. The numbers were bad. Heart rate too high, oxygen sats dropping, her skin burned under his touch, fever eating at her like wildfire. He barked orders at the nurse. "Get me 500 cc's of saline stat." But his mind was a mess, split between doctor and son. Clara's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "Noah," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Where's Lucas?" "He's here, Mom," Noah lied, forcing a smile. "Just stepped out. He'll be back." She nodded weakly, her hand fumbling for his. "Ethan, he's good. Deep down. Don't hate him." Noah's throat tightened, tears stinging his eyes. "I don't hate him, Mom. I don't know him." Her grip slackened and the monitor screeched, a flat line cutting through the room. Noah's heart stopped. "No! No! No!" He grabbed the paddles from the crash cart, shouting, "Charge it to 200!" The nurse moved fast, and he pressed the paddles to Clara's chest, her body jerking with the shock. 1 beat. 2. The line blipped back to life, erratic, but there. He sagged against the bed, breath ragged, whispering, "Stay with me, Mom. Please." Lucas didn't make it far. He slumped against the wall outside the hospital, rain soaking his suit, the anger draining into something colder, guilt, maybe, or fear. His phone buzzed. Sophie Nguyen, his law school lifeline. He answered, voice flat. "What? You okay?" Sophie's tone was sharp, no nonsense. "Heard about the gala. You're trending on Twitter. Caldwell's secret sons. Vanessa's playing dirty." Lucas wiped rain from his face, the lawsuit flashing in his mind. "She can shove it. I'm done with this crap." "Don't quit now," Sophie said. "You've got him on the ropes with the lake case. Use it." He stared at the glowing Caldwell Tech Tower in the distance, its lights mocking him through the storm. "He's my dad, Soph. How do I fight my own blood?" "You fight because it's right," she shot back. For Clara, for the lake. Blood doesn't change facts. Lucas hung up, his head pounding. She was right, but it didn't make it easier. He thought of Noah, alone with Mom, and the fight replayed. She doesn't need us tearing each other apart. He kicked the wall, pain shooting up his leg, and muttered, "Damn it, Noah." Ethan hadn't moved from the hallway, the journal open in his hands. He flipped to a page Clara had written years ago. Lucas broke his arm today, fell off the swings. Noah cried harder than he did. They're 8 and already tougher than me. I see you in them, Ethan. Every day. His chest ached, a hollow he'd ignored for decades cracking wide open. He'd missed it all. First steps, birthdays, broken bones. And now Vanessa was out there, twisting it into a tabloid nightmare. His phone buzzed. Maggie Torres, voice tight. "Boss, Vanessa's article just dropped. It's ugly. Says you abandoned Clara, calls the boys gold diggers. The board's freaking out." "Let 'em freak," Ethan growled. "I need you here. Bring the car." "On it," Maggie said, then hesitated. "You sure you're okay?" "No," he admitted, snapping the phone shut. He looked toward Clara's room, the door still ajar, Noah's shadow moving inside. He wanted to go in, to help, but Lucas's words, "Stay away," held him back. Vanessa Caldwell sat in her condo, a glass of Pinot Noir in hand, the bay shimmering black beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. The article was live, her revenge in motion, Ethan's pristine image shredded, his bastard sons painted as leeches. She smirked, scrolling the comments. "Caldwell's a deadbeat. Those kids deserve millions." Her PI had dug up dirt, Lucas's student loans, Noah's parking tickets, and she'd fed it all to the press. Her phone rang. Ethan's lawyer, voice clipped. "Pull it back, Vanessa. You're breaching the divorce NDA." "Tell Ethan to cry me a river," she said, sipping her wine. "He's not the only one with claws." She hung up, her smirk fading as she stared at the bay. She'd won this round, but the victory tasted sour. Ethan had moved on. New family, new mess, while she was still here, alone with her wine and her spite. Back in the hospital, Noah stepped out, his face ashen, scrubs stained with sweat. Ethan straightened, pocketing the journal. "She okay?" "For now," Noah said, voice hollow. "We got her back, but it's bad." "Where's Lucas?" "Left," Ethan said, guilt gnawing at him. "I screwed this up, didn't I?" Noah's eyes met his, tired and hard. "We all did, but she's asking for you. Go in. Just don't make it worse." Ethan nodded, stepping past him, the door swinging shut behind. Clara lay there, fragile as glass, her breathing shallow. He sank into the chair beside her, taking her hand. Warm, too warm. "I'm here, Clara," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm so damn sorry." Her eyes opened, faint but clear. "Stop fighting," she murmured. "All of you. Please." The plea hit like a freight train, and Ethan's tears fell. Hot, silent, unstoppable. Outside, Noah sank to the floor, head in his hands, while Lucas stood alone in the rain, the family fracturing under a storm none of them could outrun. The rain had softened to a drizzle by dawn, cloaking Seattle in a gray haze that blurred the edges of the Caldwell Tech Tower against the skyline. Inside Seattle General, the fifth-floor room was quiet, except for the steady beep of Clara Hayes's monitors, a lifeline threading through the tension of the past week. Ethan Caldwell sat by her bedside, his tuxedo jacket draped over the chair, his sleeves rolled up like he'd been there for days, which he had. His hand rested on hers, her skin cooler now, the fever finally breaking under Noah's relentless care. Clara's eyes fluttered open, catching the faint light filtering through the blinds. She smiled weakly, her voice a whisper. "You're still here?" "Damn right I am," Ethan said, his throat tight. "Not going anywhere this time." Across the room, Noah Hayes leaned against the wall, his scrubs wrinkled, a styrofoam coffee cup cold in his hand. He'd barely slept, splitting his time between Clara and the pediatric ward, where Ethan's funding had just greenlit a new wing. Lucas wasn't there. He hadn't been since the blowout in the hallway 2 nights ago, but his absence hung heavy, a ghost in the room they all felt. Clara squeezed Ethan's hand, her grip frail but firm. "Where's my other boy?" Noah hesitated, then stepped closer. "He's processing, Mom. You know how he gets." She nodded, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "Stubborn, like his dad." Ethan chuckled, a rough sound that didn't hide the ache. "Guess I passed on more than the eyes, huh?" The door creaked open, and Maggie Torres slipped in, her blazer swapped for a hoodie, her dark hair messy from a sleepless night. She carried a manila envelope, her expression tense. "Ethan, you need to see this. Found it in your old files, stuff Vanessa tried to shred before the divorce." Ethan took the envelope, his brow furrowing as he pulled out a yellowed letter, the edges frayed. Clara's handwriting stared back at him, dated 20 years ago. "Ethan, the boys are 5 now. I tried to call, but Vanessa said you didn't want to hear from me. They're yours, Lucas and Noah, if you ever change your mind." His breath caught, the words slamming into him like a brick. "She knew," he said, voice shaking. "Vanessa knew all along and lied to me." Clara's eyes widened, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I sent that. I thought you'd moved on." Ethan's hands trembled as he reread it, the pieces clicking into place. Vanessa's coldness, her insistence on handling his mail back then. "She told me you'd left town, that you didn't want anything to do with me. I looked for you anyway, but—" He trailed off, guilt choking him. Noah stepped forward, peering over Ethan's shoulder. 5? We were 5, and she blocked you? That's why we never— "Yeah," Ethan cut in, his voice raw. "That's why I missed it all. Your first days at school, the science fairs, everything. She stole that from us." Clara's monitors beeped faster, her breathing hitching. Noah moved to her side, adjusting the oxygen, but she waved him off. "Stop fussing, honey. I need to say this." She looked at Ethan, eyes fierce despite her frailty. "I should have fought harder. I let her win because I was scared of ruining you, of failing them. I was wrong." Ethan shook his head, tears brimming. "No, Clara. I should have known. I felt it. Every damn time I walked past that park in Fremont, I'd stop. Like something was pulling me. It was you. Them." Maggie cleared her throat, breaking the moment. "There's more. Vanessa's PI dug up dirt. Lucas's loans, Noah's tickets. But I've got leverage. She breached the NDA with that article. We can shut her down." "Do it," Ethan said, his voice steel. "She doesn't get to hurt them anymore." Lucas Hayes stood outside the hospital, the drizzle soaking his hoodie, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. He'd spent the night crashing at Sophie Nguyen's place, pacing her tiny Belltown apartment until she'd threatened to kick him out. The lawsuit was tomorrow, his last shot at nailing Caldwell Tech. But after Vanessa's article, the press was a circus, painting him and Noah as greedy opportunists. He hated it, hated Ethan, hated himself for walking out on Mom and Noah. His phone buzzed. Sophie again. "You're an idiot if you don't go back," she said, voice cutting through the static. "Clara needs you, not your pride." "I don't need a lecture," Lucas snapped. But his resolve wavered. He glanced up at the hospital, the 5th-floor window glowing faintly, and cursed under his breath. "Fine. I'm going." He shoved through the revolving doors, the antiseptic smell hitting him like a memory of every late-night vigil with Clara. The elevator ride felt endless, his reflection in the metal doors showing a guy who looked more lost than angry. When he stepped into the hallway, he froze. Ethan was there, stepping out of Clara's room, his face haggard but determined. Lucas tensed, ready for a fight. But Ethan held up the letter. "Read this before you say anything." Lucas snatched it, scanning the lines, his stomach dropping with every word. "Vanessa, she did this? Kept you from us?" "Yeah," Ethan said, voice low. "And I let her because I didn't push hard enough. I'm sorry, Lucas, for all of it." Lucas's hands shook, the anger he'd clung to crumbling. Why didn't Mom tell us? "She tried," Ethan said. "She thought I didn't care. Blame me, not her." Before Lucas could respond, Noah burst out, eyes wide. "Lucas, get in here. Mom's awake, and she's asking for us." The room was a sanctuary now, the tension melting as Lucas and Noah flanked Clara's bed, Ethan at her side. She looked small but alive, her smile lighting up the shadows. "My boys," she whispered, reaching for them. "All together." Lucas took her hand, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Mom. I shouldn't have left." "You're here now," she said, squeezing back. "That's enough." Noah glanced at Ethan, then at Lucas, a silent truce passing between them. "She's right. We've got time. Let's use it." Ethan pulled a chair closer, his voice soft. "Clara, I want to make this right. Not with money. With us. The boys and we've been working on something." Lucas nodded, pulling a laptop from his bag, a beat-up Dell he'd hauled through law school. "It's called Caldwell Connect, AI-driven education software free for kids in need. Noah's got the medical angle, learning tools for disabilities, and I've handled the legal side, making sure it's accessible everywhere." Clara's eyes shone, pride cutting through her exhaustion. "Like father, like sons." Ethan smiled, the first real one in days. "It's your dream too, Clara. You always said tech could level the playing field. We're launching it next month. Together." She laughed, a weak but joyful sound. "I'll hold you to that." A month later, the Rainier Club buzzed again, this time for the Caldwell Connect launch. The room was packed. Teachers, kids from underfunded schools, even a few reporters who'd switched from scandal to hope. Ethan stood at the podium, Lucas and Noah beside him, Clara in the front row, a blanket over her lap, but color back in her cheeks. The screen behind them glowed with the software demo. Simple, smart, a bridge to opportunity. "Success isn't about what you build alone," Ethan said, his voice carrying clear and strong. "For years, I thought it was money, power, a tower with my name on it. But I was wrong. It's about who you lift up along the way. These guys," he nodded at Lucas and Noah, "and their mom taught me that." Lucas stepped up, his tie still crooked, but his grin genuine. "Mom raised us to fight for what's right. This is for her, and every kid who deserves a shot." Noah followed, his scrubs swapped for a suit, his voice steady. "She chose us over everything else. Now we're choosing to give back, because family isn't just blood. It's what you build together." The crowd applauded, flashes popping as Clara wiped her eyes. Afterward, in a quiet corner, the four of them gathered, the journal open on the table, old pages next to new ones, chronicling their reunion. Ethan took Clara's hand, his voice low. "I missed 25 years. I'm not missing another day." She smiled, leaning into him. "Good, because we've got bridges to build." Lucas clinked his glass against Noah's, a smirk breaking through. "To Mom, and to not killing each other, not." To second chances, Noah added, and they drank, the rain outside fading to a whisper. Seattle stretched out beyond the windows, its scars and shine blending under a clearing sky. Ethan had found his fortune, not in billions, but in the family he'd almost lost. Lucas and Noah had turned pain into purpose, and Clara had seen her dream come true. Success, they'd learned, wasn't a tower or a headline. It was the bridges they'd built, across years and tears, to a future worth fighting for. Man, what a ride, right? From secrets and storms to a family finding its way, this is what it's all about. If that hit you in the heart, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more stories like this. Drop a comment. What's your big takeaway from Ethan, Lucas, Noah, and Clara's journey? Let's keep the convo going.